All right, so I'm about to show you a technique for drawing that is called a grid system or grid drawing. So for this project, we're going to practice this technique, which is really just used for enlarging images or copying an image in like a larger format. So I have this little example of like a little cartoon star, and I'm going to practice enlarging it by using a grid system. So you'll notice that there's these dotted lines. I've got a dotted line dividing it vertically and horizontally on the little picture, and I've got the same number of lines on my big quote unquote paper, my big section on the right. So since there's four sections on the left, I have four sections on the right, and we're just going to start by taking one section at a time and copying what we see in just that section. So this is a way to simplify an image that may be very complicated, for example, portraits or animals, into just small sections that are a lot easier for us to manage. So I started with just that first section, then move on to the second section, and only worry about what's in that section. So you can see that there's really not that much in each section. It makes this a lot easier and, believe it or not, faster when you're trying to draw something complicated. So we're going to use this grid system technique on a more complex artwork, not just a cartoon. So make sure that you have a good understanding of that before we move on to the next step. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've found a picture that I would like to draw, and for your artwork, I want you to pick a photo that you've taken. We always want to use our own references so that the artwork we make isn't infringing on somebody else's copyright. So pick a picture, go ahead and print it. You don't have to print it full page. I just did so it would be easy to see. It's okay if it's half page. If you do even smaller, it may be an extra challenge because it's going to be harder for you to see the details, but certainly you don't need to print it giant because the whole point is that this is a technique that you can use to enlarge it. What I'm going to do is cut this little white border off the side of it. And the picture that I picked is rectangular in format. So if your picture is one that you found on your Instagram, that's not going to work. All right, if you're just have your hard set on that picture, what you could do is edit the picture or crop it so that it's a rectangular format. It's really important that your picture is a rectangle and not a square, because the paper that we're transferring it to is a rectangle. So if your picture is a square and then you transfer that onto a rectangular piece of paper, what's going to happen is your image is going to be all stretched out. It's going to look kind of crazy. All right, so once you've got that little white border trimmed off the side of this, you're going to fold your picture in half, line up your corners, and fold. Then you're going to turn it, fold it in half again, turn it, fold it in half again, turn it, fold it in half one more time. So that was 1, 2, is that 3 or 4 times? Yeah, 3, and then that was 4 folds. So now I should have 16 sections folded into my photograph. Okay, so I need to create 16 sections on my big paper. Remember, you want to have the same number of sections in your reference as you do on the final drawing. Okay, what is kind of an extra challenge is that I don't want to actually fold this piece of paper. If you fold this, it's going to create a lot of messiness that you would have to deal with later, and you'll never really get those folds completely out. You don't want people to know that you did this. You want to just have people in awe of your drawing ability and be like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And you don't have to tell them. But if they can see that you folded your paper, they'll know that there's something up, okay? So we need to measure and divide this paper into 4 equal sections this way, 4 equal sections this way, and then when we connect our lines across, it's going to make our grid. So let me go ahead and measure that real fast. So I need to divide 18 inches into 4 equal sections. For me, the easiest way is to first divide it in half. So that's going to be at 9 inches. I'm going to make a little mark. Then I need to find halfway between 0 and 9. So that's going to be 4.5. And then halfway between 9 and 18, which is going to be 13.5. So this means each section that I have is how big? 4.5 inches wide. I need to do the same thing at the bottom, and then I'm going to make a mark at those same places. So 4.5, 9, 13.5. And then I need to connect these. It's really important that you use a wooden pencil for this step. If you use a mechanical pencil, that mechanical pencil will often carve that line into the paper. So it'll actually indent the paper. It's really important that these lines are very, very light. And the mechanical pencil, when it indents the paper, what that means is that as you shade on top of it, you'll actually continue to see these grid lines even after you've erased them. I want you to draw your grid lines even lighter than mine. They're for your eyes only. You should barely see them. One side done. Now I'm going to turn my paper and divide this into 4 sections. So that is 12 inches across, which makes this some very easy measuring. Make a mark at 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. Do the same thing on the bottom. And now I need to connect these lines. There should be 16 sections, just like there are 16 sections of our photograph. At this point, I need to get the basic shapes from here onto here. I'm just going to look at the big shapes, like where is the eye, where is the ear, that kind of stuff. So this is just a line drawing, similar to what I had here, right? Just copying where the outlines of stuff are gonna go. I'm actually going to fold away everything except that first square. So that's going to go here. It's helpful if you forget what this is even a picture of. And what helps me is to look for where along the edge of this section do my shapes line up. So like I'm looking at this area right here, which is a little bit past halfway. So halfway across this section is about right here. I'm going to go a little bit further than that. That's where that shape is going to go. All right, I've got this shape, which is about 1/3 of the way from the corner. It's about 1/3 of the way over here. There it is. So those are things that I look for when I'm sketching it out to make sure that everything is the right size. Okay, one section down. Let's go to the next one. Fold everything else away so that you aren't tempted to draw stuff that you think is there, but might not actually be there. Next section. So let me go ahead, get the rest of this sketched out for you. When you get to a section like this, that maybe has some really important parts or maybe is really complicated. For example, you might have, if you've got a portrait of like your brother or somebody important to you, their face might end up all in one section. So if that happens, what you can do is break this down into an even smaller grid. And you could measure it. I'm just gonna eyeball this, and I'm going to divide this in half and then in half again. So basically just drawing a big plus sign. And then I'm going to do the same thing on just this section. Just the one that has something that I want to be absolutely certain I'm going to get right. Okay, so now I can see that this eye is going to be only in this section. That helps me out a lot to be able to tell how big that eye should be, because I don't want to goof up the eyes. The eyes are really important. And you could divide this up into even smaller sections. I've seen people come in and do stuff like this, where they divide that into an even smaller section, just to be sure that they've got it right. Okay, so once you have everything just kind of sketched in and outlined, then you're ready to start adding your shading. Now you, at this point, might decide that you want to go ahead and erase your grid lines so that you can just shade over them and not have to worry about trying to get rid of them later. Some people prefer to erase one section at a time, so they'll just erase the grid lines around the section they're working on, then move on to the next one. But you don't want to wait until you're completely finished to then erase the grid lines, because what will happen is you'll have all this beautiful shading, and when you erase, you're going to have a white grid line instead of a dark grid line. So they'll still be there. You would still have to go back and try to blend to get rid of it and hide those grid lines. So now is a good time to get rid of those if you feel like everything lines up and is in the right place. All right, good luck. Take your time. This is not a race. This is not something where the faster you draw this, the better it's going to be. You really, really have to take your time for it to come out the way that you hope.